Hey, welcome to the Clive Barker Podcast, episode 71. So this was The Thief of Always. So Jose and I had kind of talked about that we'd been avoiding doing book episodes long enough, and so we thought we'd kind of ease our way back into it with The Thief of Always, which, you know, despite it's short and it's a kind of a children's fable, but it's also one of our favorite books. So it was really fun to talk about. So here we go, episode 71, Thief of Always. Welcome to episode 71 of the Clive Barker Podcast.
Wow.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We're almost at 75. Pretty soon we'll get a telegram from the Queen.
We'll get knighted.
Yeah. So let me just give me a little moment to open up my OneNote here.
Okay. Well, we can start up with the news. Jacqueline S., the movie.
Yes.
Has a director announced, Jovanka Vukovic.
Yeah, Jovanka, who was, at one point she was editor of Rue Morgue magazine. So, and she did a short called The Captured Bird, I think.
Yeah, and you sent me a link to that, and no, it was Christian Francis sent me a link to that, and I watched it, and it's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember sending you a link, so
yeah.
Maybe you had seen it by that time, yeah. So yeah, it's cool. It's got really good setting, and you know the sets are beautiful. The creatures that she invented for that are amazing.
Yeah,
Little
it's kind
girl
of
is
a disturbing little short film that doesn't really resolve.
Yeah, it's kind of a more impressionistic kind of thing. Like it doesn't really have a story that you can talk about, but it's like lined with metaphor and little things about being a child and being female and growing up and stuff like that. So, yeah, you can see all sorts of things in there.
Yeah. And the main actress who is presumably going to play Jacqueline S., I mean, it would have to be, is Lena Headey, who is in Game of Thrones. She's the horrible, horrible queen.
Queen Cersei? Something like that. Yeah, Queen Cersei.
I've actually met her. I recognized. I mean, I knew her from Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles, the TV show.
Oh,
I got that autographed by her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so
she was at Texas Frightmare Weekend, I think, or maybe it was Mad Monster Party. One of those for those Chrome Skull movie. You know the Laid to Rest. There's Laid to Rest and then Laid to Rest 2 Chrome Skull.
Wow.
So, yeah, she was in those.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she's the incestuous queen in Game of Thrones.
Yeah. And producer is Russell Charrington. So,
yeah, it's going to be executive producer, I think, right?
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. And I didn't update we have a story on our site about this, and I didn't update it yet to put Russell's name in there because that would have been the third update because when we just heard about that. So that's cool. Congratulations to all those people, and Russell is somebody we all know personally, from all of our Occupy Midi and stuff. So it's really cool.
Absolutely.
To see that.
Wishing all the best for this project because it's sounding pretty kick-ass.
Yeah, geez. I mean, it's just. Sometimes, things start happening and you get little doubts about them, but I don't really feel that with this one.
No, because even Lena Headey?
Yeah.
Even that actress is amazing, and she has this commanding presence. I mean, she plays a queen in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
So I always envisioned Jacqueline S. as being a woman who can look vulnerable at times, but at other times would have a very commandeering presence on screen.
Yeah, it seems like she always plays somebody that's kind of intense and kind of angry on the inside, which is a good Jacqueline S.
Yes, absolutely. It's a perfect Jacqueline S. description.
Yeah. So that's cool. I mean, I'm trying to remember how I picture her in my mind, but I don't remember. I mean, I think she'll be great.
I picture her in my mind as a woman with long, very curly brown hair, much like the cover of the Books of Blood that was painted by Clive Barker.
Right, of course. Yeah, with the little monsters and stuff in her hair.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not the monsters until she started transforming.
I'm just identifying the painting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. So that's that, and man, I mean, it's just still in pre-production, but it's hard to be patient for that when they haven't even started filming. So it probably will be a year or so before we can watch that.
And we've heard about this project almost a year before it actually fell in place.
And we weren't allowed to talk about it.
We weren't allowed to talk about it, but being friends with Russell, we know how much he has worked in this project with Seraphin. So it was great to finally follow the events through and hearing about Raven Banner Entertainment and finding out about Jovanka Vukovic and all this amazing talent gathering around this project.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. So the next thing is the new. So the Hellraiser series has kind of been broken up into shorter, digestible chunks as far as like runs of comics. So the last one was Hellraiser. What was it called? Like The Dark Watch. And so,
The Dark Watch.
And that ended at number 12, I think, right?
Yes, it was number 12, I think, yeah.
So after Hellraiser The Dark Watch, the new series is going to be called Hellraiser Bestiary.
Mm-hmm.
And those, from what I understand, are going to be more back to the Marvel Epic style of mini episodes.
Yes, and I'm very happy about that. I'm very happy about that because
different guest writers and things, too.
Yeah, because I got this nostalgia thing going on for the old-time Hellraiser comics. I always, I enjoyed a lot of the storylines in the Boom Studios Hellraiser comic books. But I always felt like I missed that instant gratification that I got from seeing a short tale told in like a half a dozen pages.
No, I mean, you make a good point because in these long runs of comics, you cannot miss an issue because you won't know what's going on, or you won't want to read number 5 if you never got number 4.
Right.
Yeah.
So it becomes a bit of a chore to have to wait, and
That's
if you miss one, then you have to order it and wait for it to come.
If it's 1 or 2 months between issues, then you might have to go back and because they read so fast, you'd have to go back and read the last one again to kind of remember where you're at. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that Bestiaries is going to come back to that style of 1 or 2 little short stories per issue, but it's going to be really rewarding to the short term.
And I think they had said that Mark Miller was going to contribute, and so Mark Miller and Ben Mears is going to be a contributor, and I can't remember who else that they announced. But yeah, that's cool. I mean, it'll be good.
Yeah. And geez, who knows? Who knows what can come up, out of this project. So
and this Hellraiser series had a really long run. So I think it's okay now to switch formats.
Oh yeah, it went all the way to 20, right? And then there was
and then plus another 12 for the Dark Watch, which really was a continuation of the first 20.
And there was also another little story arc before that, right?
Right.
The road below.
Well, the road below happened like around number 12, I think.
Oh, okay. So it was still part of the 1 to 20 numbers.
Yeah, well, it was, but they had their own numbers.
Yeah, right.
So it's kind of confusing.
It's been a longer run. What we're trying to say, it's been a longer run now than it's ever been with the old Marvel comics.
Yeah. That's right. And so it's like, it's nice that they're doing something to keep it fresh and to not have to keep on building on other people's stories continuously until it's unrecognizable.
Yeah, because once you have more than two people working on one storyline, it starts getting a little confusing where the story is trying to go.
Yeah, and different people think that different things are important, or somebody lays a seed for something to happen later, but then the next person maybe doesn't pick it up because they have their own ideas about what they think is important.
Right, like Leviathan being a milkman.
Right, yeah.
So, no, I understand what you mean. Yeah, it's going to be fun. Let's see how the little stories are going to be like.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that instant gratification of reading a whole story and being like, wow, that was really cool.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that my comic shop here in Fairbanks will actually pull these for me, because for like 12 years or so, I've been trying to get them. I asked them to set up a pull list, and they say they've done it, and it never doesn't happen. So then I get in there and I'm like, okay, can I see what's in my box or whatever? And they're like, what's your name? Oh, we don't see a box here for you.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
That's so incompetent. Wow.
Yeah.
So even when you set one up, they still forget about it eventually.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes it's because, and there was one time when I had one, but I didn't go for 2 months, so they thought that was too long, and I moved away or something, so they just put my things back on the shelf and they got sold.
Oh.
And there's another time, and then all the other times they just, they took
2
my
weeks.
name down, but they never bothered to make the little thing, and they don't pull the comics, and I don't know. It's just...
Wow, that's terrible.
Yeah.
The guys at my comic book store, they even put stuff that's spin-offs, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, this one isn't. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to do Next Testament, but I'm getting all these Next Testament ones for free because of this weird mix-up with Boom Studios. So really, it's only Hellraiser comics, and I told and they're like, okay, Hellraiser what? What's it called? I'm like, well, the truth is, I don't know the name now because Hellraiser, the Dark Watch had just ended.
Right.
And they're like, okay, anything with Hellraiser in it. I'm like, well, okay, but
Yeah, well, I mean, they have a system. They have a database. Just look up Hellraiser and see what comes up. I'm sure it's going to still be under Hellraiser. It's not going to be called but I don't want the regular show.
I don't want the Hellraiser Masterpieces one.
Yeah. Well, that would say Masterpiece. So.
Yeah. Yeah, but I can always just say no, not this one, I guess, because I don't like that those are not in order. That really bothers me. I mean, and I know you said that the quality's not as good also. But I don't like that they're all out of order, so you can buy as many Hellraiser Masterpieces as you want, and you'll never know without doing a lot of research if you got them all.
Right. And, Marvel Masterpieces, as I understand it, was just an anthology of what were considered the best stories in the Hellraiser comics.
Right. So there's but there's a finite number of them. They should have just done a big graphic novel and put them all in there in order.
Oh, yeah, right. I mean, I have no idea how many there are because I never paid attention to them.
Right. We just know there's 20 issues.
Yeah, but there's no way that they published 20 issues. They only published 3 or 4 from what I remember.
Yeah.
It's really just an anthology of what's considered the best stories, which, as anthologies go, it's probably not that bad, but I think they missed a lot of short little stories on Hellraiser comics from Marvel that I really adore, and I think they're really awesome. And they never made these anthologies, so I'm
And maybe they don't have one long continuous story, but they do reference each other, and there are things that happen that affect what happens later on down the line in those comics. So if you put them all out of order and leave stuff out, it's not, it's...
To a small extent. They usually, in this Masterpieces, they only went for the beginning and end stories. They didn't go for, those arcs, the one that took place in, this fictional country where there was apartheid and stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, those don't make it to Marvel Masterpieces. Mm-hmm. The ones that had a continuity, right?
Yeah, I don't even know. I just know that it would bug me, knowing that buying those that I couldn't get all of them.
Yeah. Anyway, Hellraiser Bestiary. It's going to be short stories on these issues, so I don't know for sure how many stories it's going to be per issue. If it's going to be a self-contained story in a single issue, if it's going to be 2, if it's going to be 3.
And
so
I think we even got did we get a date for the first issue? I think it was like May 30th or something like that.
I don't know.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong. There's all these comics coming out now because we've got the Nightbreed comics which are coming out any time now, right?
Yeah, I think so. I told the comic books. Oh wait.
Oh, Hellraiser Bestiary is in August.
Yeah.
Nightbreed comics are this month.
Yeah, I'm thinking I forgot to tell my comic book store to hold on those Nightbreed comics for me. So
and Next Testament number 9 was, according to the last release date I got, was yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're probably right.
Huh. Wow. And the Next Testament paperback trade paperback number 1 should already be out. If anybody's interested in just getting them collected instead of individual issues.
I did get some of those for the Hellraiser comic books. Like I got like the first 2 or 3 paperbacks. So it's like I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think it's like either 6 comics or 9 comics. I'm not sure. So I have those first ones in paperback form. It's practical if you just want to take them out and read them wherever. I mean, it's not something that I would collect. I wouldn't collect the paperback edition.
Yeah. Okay, well, the next thing, so Leviathan, the story of Hellraiser and Hellbound Hellraiser 2, the documentary and that long title, they just came out with a trailer. So we'll have the link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, we've been posting it on Facebook, and I think we posted also on the WordPress blog. So
if for some reason you missed that, we'll give you another chance to look at it. But it's cool, and everybody's looking forward to this movie, which should be really long and extensive.
Yeah, around 3.5 hours or something.
Yeah.
I hope they can get Clive Barker to chime in for that.
Yeah, that would be cool. And so that's it for news, unless there's anything else you can think of.
Not really. I think that's it for news. Yeah.
Okay, so our main topic for episode 71 is The Thief of Always. And we haven't been doing books for quite a while just because we've been a little busy and haven't been able to take the time to read books. So, and also we skipped ahead a little bit. And we'll don't worry, we'll be going back and we'll still do the books of the art, at least, the first 2, and we'll do Imagica, but those are, those are going to be big projects that are going to span multiple episodes.
Yeah.
So for right now, we wanted to kind of ease our way back into books with The Thief of Always.
Yes, Thief of Always, a book that Clive Barker came up with in 1992? One. It was published in 92, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. 92.
Yeah. So, and he had to sell this book to HarperCollins for $1 because at the time they weren't sure if they were going to be able to market this for someone like Clive Barker, who had made a name for himself until that point, mostly through horror.
And I read that too, but do you think that he never made any money off of The Thief of Always?
Well, I'm sure that his contract wasn't just for $1. I mean, I'm sure $1 was for them to accept his manuscript, so to speak, to accept to publish it. But I'm sure he must have made some kind of money out of the paperbacks and mass market paperbacks.
The second signing that I ever went to was for Thief of Always, and I still have my line ticket. I keep it as a bookmark in my copy of The Thief of Always. And
that's wonderful.
In 1992, I was number 135 in line.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah. That was really cool. And we got to go to the people who bought their books at Golden Age Collectibles at the Pike Place Market in Seattle. They would hold the book for you, and you would have an order, a number in line based on what order you bought the book. and that was also a ticket to get into a little amphitheater where you could sit and do a question and answer with Clive Barker, and he read the first chapter of The Thief of Always.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah. I have to say, I first got in contact with this book through a paperback edition from HarperCollins, UK edition, and I think I have the first UK paperback edition
without the illustrations.
The one that has the illustrations.
Oh, there's a paperback that has the illustrations in it? I didn't know that.
I didn't think there was any form of Thief of Always who doesn't have the illustrations.
Really? I thought that they left him out of, that US edition that has the blue cover with the little kid running away, with the Harvey running away.
No, actually I have both the UK and the American one, and they all have the illustrations.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, it shows what I know.
My work copy for this episode was a first Harper Paperbacks printing of October 93, printed in the United States of America. And it has all the illustrations in here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I stopped buying paperbacks when I got tricked with the Imagica.
Oh.
When Imagica, when I saw a paperback that said Imagica 2, I'm like,
yeah.
Who? No one ever told me about that there was an Imagica 2. And and I looked through it. I'm like, wait a minute, this is the second half of the same book. And then I went and found the first half in the bookstore. I'm like, this was a nasty trick. And so then I never bought any. And at that time I was collecting all the hardcovers and all the paperbacks.
Yeah.
And I traded all of my after that happened. I traded all my paperbacks in, and just stuck with the hardcovers after that.
Yeah, and as a collector's point of view, that was actually a sane choice to do. I got in contact with Clive Barker mostly through the paperbacks, then I evolved into hardbacks.
Yeah, well, I did too. I mean, I started out with a paperback of Cabal. That was my first one.
Yeah, and some of the books I never really got the hardback. I just keep that one first romantic paperback that I ever read, and it's like, oh, this is the book that I read. I don't need any other edition. This is the one. And it's like I have that for Great and Secret Show. I have that for I still have. It's practically intact. It's almost brand new, and I've read it twice. But you know how it's like when we're collectors. We don't want to break the spine.
Yeah,
you just
I was
read
just
it.
going to ask you about that. So you don't break the spine. That's really hard to do, and I don't do it either.
Yeah.
One time I was in high school and I was reading. I think it was Cabal or Imagica. I can't remember, in my Japanese class before class started. And and I was, carefully holding it just open enough so that it wouldn't put a crease in the spine. And this kid came over and jerked it out of my hands and said, "Why don't you just do this?" And he folded it all the way around so that the front and back covers were touching each other.
Oh my God!
I so much wanted to punch him in the face.
Oh man, I don't think I would have been able to prevent myself from doing that.
Yeah, but I just kept on thinking, he just doesn't, he wasn't trying to be a jerk. He really thinks that he was helping me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, no cure for stupid.
And there are a lot of people that read like that. And, you see that and it just like,
yeah, I know.
It gives me shivers to see people doing that to a book.
I'll do that to a newspaper or to a magazine, but it's like, not if I'm collecting the magazine though. Yeah. I wouldn't do that to my National Geographic magazines.
Yeah.
But if it's just a cheap tabloid thing, I'll just fold that thing around. I don't care. But if I want to do some more intensive work with a book that I like, what I do is I go on Amazon and I buy a 1-penny edition.
Yeah.
And I wait a couple of days. I get the book, even if it's beat up book. I mean, it's fine. Mm-hmm. You can manipulate it without having any problem. You're like, dude, you're just an old book. I don't care. You're all broken up anyway. So I'm just going to underline. I'm just going to put Post-its here. I'm just going to I'm going to tear out this page and scan the illustration, and that's it. And after I'm done, it's like, well, I'll just put it in a box somewhere.
You remember I had posted in one of the Clive Barker groups that, a questionnaire about what book I should loan out to somebody to introduce them to Clive Barker. So this lady she's like 25 years old, and she'd never heard of him, but she really likes reading, so she wanted me to pick something. So I picked Weave World, and I know that she's going to be moving in, I think, the end of June. And I loaned her my first edition UK autographed edition of Weave World because that's all I have.
My God.
I mean, my other one is the $300, one that's in like the box case or whatever. So, there's something to be said for having the paperbacks. when something like this comes up, you wish that you still had those.
Yeah, look, I mean, the word copy that I'm using, that I'm holding in my hand here, it's full of like pink Post-its. Yeah. Yes, it's pink. But
you would loan that out and not care if it never came back again.
I bought this in like a flea market in Ohio. I think it cost me like $1 or 50 cents or something. Yeah. And I was like, oh, well, I was kind of on a date with my now wife, Sarah. And I was like, hey, cool. I'm going to buy this book and say, oh, here, Sarah, read this book. You're going to like it. It's from Clive Barker. It's one of my favorite writers. And she was like, oh, okay. So she read the book. She loved it. And then we just kept the book around the shelf. And I was like, well, eventually I'm going to have to do the podcast with Ryan. So I'm going to keep the old battered paperback around because my wife just donates all her paperbacks to the local library. And that's it. Yeah. After a while. So I was like, okay, I'm going to put it on that shelf. And we had friends over, and we were, chatting and having wine. And I was like, hey, one of my friend's wives, she likes to read. I said, here, read this book. Tell me what you think. And, she took it. She read it. She loved it. So there you go. I mean, I feel good because this copy is being put to use. It's being useful to expose other people to this story, which for me is kind of a romantic idea. But it's like, you want everybody to be able to read this book. It's a little masterpiece,
Which one was that again?
Thief of Always.
Oh, Thief of Always. Okay. Yeah. Bringing it back around.
Sure. Yeah. Thief of Always. So my work copy for this episode is right here, full of pink Post-its. Yeah. So
I just have the first edition. I also had bought in that particular book signing. You could buy one Thief of Always and then bring one other book to get autographed. So I bought a book for myself, a book for my brother, and I think a book for my mom at the time, because I was still in 91. I was still in high school.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they still have those books, but I still have mine.
Well, they might have them. I mean, if it's a gift from your brother or your son, or
I bought my dad's house, and I found my brother's autographed Great and Secret show in the crawl space.
That's terrible. Mm-hmm. Oh man! At least it wasn't like being used as a door stopper or something.
Yeah. Well, that was worse because it's all wet down there.
At least you can imagine that. Okay, well, he was probably moving out, and one of his shelves hit the wall, and this fell in the crawl space. Yeah. Let's not assume your brother put it there. My brother
moved out, and my dad didn't want any of his stuff around, so he just shoved it all down there. So my brother just left it there.
Yeah. Well,
he's more of a Robert Jordan Wheel of Time fan.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, not everyone has to like the same thing, so I completely understand.
I once went to a book signing for Terry Brooks as a stand-in for my brother because he couldn't make it or something. So the guy was like, Terry Brooks was all excited because I had these books to sign, and I had never read any of them.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, so what's your favorite one? I'm like, well, this is for my brother. And he goes, oh, which one does he like the most? I have no idea.
I don't know.
and he signed them all like wishing you magic and your magic, and everyone had a different inscription with the word magic in it. I'm like, oh man, give me a break.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, someone has to be fans of those guys,
Yeah, that's true.
That's only fair. So, Thief of Always. We're talking about the illustrations. And, oh, by the way, you never saw that book again that you loaned out to that lady, right?
Well, she still has it. She's still here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she hasn't started reading it yet. I'm just scared because she's leaving at the end of June. I'm scared that she won't read it in time and she's going to take it with her. Well,
you have until the first week of June to go over to her place and ask her for your book.
Yeah.
I mean, if she's moving, who cares if it's rude? Just go there and ask her for it.
Yep.
All right, yeah. So, yeah, Thief of Always, 1991. He wrote it. 92, it was published.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful book.
I love the Clive Barker illustrated cover, and there are not many Clive Barker books that have that. I mean, you would think that it would happen more often because we collectors really appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the only books of Clive Barker who have had him do the covers for have been Books of Blood. He did a cover for The Thief of Always.
Yeah.
He did another cover for, what other book did he do the cover for?
I can't. Whoa, I'm getting a phone call. That's kind of late.
Okay.
To that. I'm going to skip it.
I was trying to come up with another book. I thought there were 3 books. No, maybe it's just 2.
Well, I mean,
well, he did the one for Cabal.
There's Forms of Heaven and Incarnations, too.
Exactly. There are those 2, yeah. And
Aberrat, of course.
Yeah, Aberrat. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking about. Absolutely. So, yeah, you know what? He has shown that he can do some really good book covers.
Yeah, I don't know if it's something. Is it something with the publishers that they don't allow him to do that?
No, I don't know. Maybe sometimes he just doesn't feel like doing covers for his books.
Yeah.
Or maybe they just want to, they find someone who is really good book cover artist and they just give it to him. I mean, I love the covers from Great and Secret Show and Weave World, the ones that look like they look like tapestries.
Oh yeah, the UK ones. The
UK ones, the ones that I have.
The US ones aren't so great.
Yeah, I love those covers. They're so full of detail and color and symmetry and stuff. They're amazing. I mean,
the US
I love them.
Great and Secret Show is a mailbox.
So, the thing is, we were talking about the book cover, and you were talking about how much you love the Clive Barker one.
Yeah.
I'm going to come out and say it. I personally prefer the blue one,
Really?
the one that was paint. Yeah, I prefer this one. That was the cover art by Kirk Reinard.
Yeah.
I love this cover. I love it. It's like I say it's apart from the Aberrat books. This is one of the most beautiful covers I've seen in a Clive Barker book.
But this one is a wraparound painting that goes all the way from all the way across the back also.
Yeah. That's I've seen like the full image like flat out on the internet.
Yeah.
And it's like it's just so amazing. When you look at the back cover, you see the demon there, and you see the Holiday House sign and a little bicycle that's stuck in the snow. Yeah. It's just so much detail in this. You see the glow around the moon and the crescent, and it's like it's beautiful. And then this little kid running towards the light, and there's this demonic vampire shape in his shadow. It's just amazing. I love this cover. I have to say, this is the favorite Clive Barker book cover for me.
Ah, wow! Of all book covers.
Yes. Even with Aberrat, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I really like this one.
Even more than like the Books of Blood?
Yes. Well, that's different. The style starts getting really different. So
yeah, it is different.
But yeah, I love this one. For any kind of fantasy or, novel, this is the best one I've seen.
Wow. Okay, well, I didn't give it much of a chance. I was really kind of shocked and disappointed that it wasn't the same as the hardcover painting at the time that it came out.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, a year maybe after the first edition?
Sure, yeah, I think so. Yeah. Well, I also have the hardcover first edition signed by Clive Barker. Yeah. I bought it from Del Howison at Burbank.
Right, yeah, that's right. So you have it there with you. It's not even in Portugal then.
No, yeah, it's with me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess we want to try to do this without spoiling the whole story, right?
Well, sure. I mean, what are the...
We can kind of talk about the premise of it, I guess, to start with, is that Harvey, the first chapter is about how Harvey is disappointed with life. And he's being devoured by the great gray beast of February. So
yeah.
So February is a month that's too far. Christmas is long gone, and there's no holidays in February. And the next, I forget what the next one is. It's too far away.
It was
Easter, I think, is too
Christmas.
far. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And then Easter is too far away in April, and the weather is kind of dismal, and he's feeling bored, and it's and we talked about this before, but it's really kind of a reminiscent of Hellraiser in a way, because it's like
he's Frank.
Yeah, he's Frank.
Teenage Frank.
Yeah. Except it's, you can't blame him because he's a kid, and Frank kind of more deserved what he got.
Yeah, I could see like Harvey Swick.
Yeah.
Going over his chocolate milk. It's never enough.
Yeah.
So
I think
he's a very bored kid. Yeah, he's an English kid. He lives in a town called Millsap.
Is he English?
I think so.
In England, because there was one line where they said something about in all of America land.
Oh, wait a minute, huh? Is that when Mr. Hood is growing flowers or something?
Yeah. There was, and that was the only line that I ever saw anywhere that referenced where they were.
Because I always figured that this was England because of the way they talk, because of the way Wendell talks and some expressions that they use. I thought that was England.
And the way they wander around town sort of reminds me of Weave World too. But I think
that's a good question, actually.
They do say all of America land, which makes me think that it happens in the U.S.
Or could they be referring to America as in these flowers are from America? Because they talk about flowers from Tibet and stuff like that. I'm trying to find that one line, and it's hard to find.
Remember. I wish that I had written it down.
It's okay. I don't want to delay the episode here, but yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'll trust you because you say this takes place in America. To me, I thought this took place in England.
Well, and it feels English, But I think even stories that Clive Barker first wrote when he moved to the U.S., there's still some stuff that slips out. Like he'll call the hood of a car, he'll call it a bonnet, or. There were little things that would slip out, like in the dialogue that that person probably should have said this instead.
Right. It's like even the name sounds British. Harvey Swick.
It does, yeah. Definitely.
Wendell the Third. I don't know. I don't want to insist, but I feel this book feels very British to me.
Well, listeners, why don't you guys let us know on Facebook or in the comments for this episode? Let us know what you think. Is this in America or is it in the UK?
You know what? I think that's on purpose because any good fantasy story has to be able to take place anywhere.
Well, and it's a fable, right? And he even goes out of his way to not say what year it is. Even when it's important to the story, he still nobody says what year it is.
Yeah, so you don't know where this is or when this is, which are two requisites for making a good fantasy story.
Yeah.
It's once upon a time.
Yeah, and there's a part where you really want them to say what year it is because you want to know how far apart Lulu and Wendell and Harvey are in time.
Yeah.
But he no matter how tempting it was, Clive never came out and said the year, that it took place. But in Weave World from a line that it takes place in the 80s.
Sure.
But not in this one. And I think it was deliberate to make like you said, to make it more of a universal story.
Yeah, like it begins here in a random spot, and then as the story had no beginning, then it will have no end.
Yeah.
That's the opening and the ending of the story in Weave World.
Yeah.
So, but it's interesting. It's interesting here that I'm going to try to be succinct because I know we go on for like a couple hours an episode, but I don't want to, delay too much. But I came out of a Harry Potter marathon because I had a cold. You might find my voice is still a little under recovery, but I saw Harry Potter marathon. I saw all 8 movies of Harry Potter. So I'm influenced to say that Harry Potter reminded me a lot in the first movie of The Thief of Always, because it's this kid, he's like a little British kid, and, all of a sudden he discovers there's this magical place he's going to go to, and, it's wonderful to be there. It's very drab back home.
Nobody else in the real world understands.
Yeah, and then he's visited by Rictus in the novel, and Harry Potter is visited by Dobby in like the fourth movie or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's also a very Harvey Swick moment for me when Dobby comes in, and it's like Rictus showing up to Harvey Swick. Yeah. So I was like, I'm getting these vibes.
No,
I don't know.
I felt the same way when I first read I read the first Harry Potter before the movies came out, because I was substitute teaching. And the kids were every period the kids were watching the same first quarter of a movie over and over again. So I was like, that's it. I got to do something else. So I found Harry Potter on the desk and I read the first book. But that's the only one I read. But I did watch all the movies, and I did get that same feeling. And also, it almost to the point that it felt a little derivative to me, which probably a lot of people out there would argue and would get mad at me for saying that. But I felt it was less imaginative than something Clive Barker would do, right? Because you've got witches riding on brooms and stuff.
Yeah. So it then goes on to become its own thing. But those moments are very similar to Thief of Always to me.
Yeah.
So I'm not in any way saying that, J.K. Rowling copied Clive Barker. I'm just saying that there are these elements to every good kid's story that, it's the kid being miserable and going to a magical place and being happy. Yeah. And, those are the stories that appeal to kids.
Right. It's the Peter Pan thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's funny that those echoes of those elements repercuss in The Thief of Always and in Harry Potter.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Rictus shows up to visit Harvey Swick as he's being eaten alive by the great grey beast of February.
Yeah.
He lives in the town of Millsap. And do we get what his dad does? He lies to Wendell at one point in the story. He says his dad is a surgeon, but I forgot if we ever know what his dad does.
I can't remember either.
Yeah, maybe he doesn't say, so it's even more ambiguous. But Rictus is this guy who appears in his bedroom. He comes in through the window, and
kind of like the vampires in what is that teenage vampire movie I'm trying to think of?
Lost Boys.
Lost Boys, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Harvey, come with us. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, actually, he's kind of a jerk. It's like, hey, I've got this awesome place, this magical place, but you're not allowed to ask questions. And every time Harvey asks a question, he's like, well, if you're going to keep asking questions, I'm just going to go without you. Yeah,
and for a kid, that's like the ultimate contradiction. You have to ask a kid not to ask any questions. He's not going to respect that. Yeah. That goes against everything being a child means. It's being inquisitive, being curious, wanting to know how things work.
But it's like Clive Barker threw out a red flag immediately. This guy has got this big sort of plastered on fake smile. He floats in the window with magic and is trying to talk this kid into leaving and not going to school, and you can't ask any questions.
Exactly. He's a sinister.
Sinister and creepy.
Sinister and demon with a smile. Yeah. And he says the questions rot the mind, which for a child, this can't be further from the truth. So those are huge red flags right there. And then he goes like, well, you want to go or not? And he also sounds like a pusher, like a drug dealer. Like, hey, man, I got something really cool, but you can't ask me any questions. And you got to come with me right now. And it's like,
There are a lot of, this is a short book, but there's a lot of little lessons sort of packed in here.
Yeah.
I guess it's being a fable.
Eventually he does give in to Rictus. He does follow him, and he takes him through the city, and he takes him to this place called Holiday House. Yeah. When they arrive to that place, there's like a lot of mist, kind of a fog, like a weird fog that appears, which is another element that made me think that this might be England. So... And when they cross over the fog, they're greeted by this immediate springtime and warmth and sunshine. And it's like, oh, my God, this is awesome, because it was raining. He was depressed. He was like, this sucks. It's February. It's cold. And then he finds this place where the sun is shining and it's springtime.
Yeah.
And he falls under the spell of the Holiday House.
And they're allowed to make phone calls to their parents, whenever they want, and somebody's like the Terminator is answering on the other line, I guess. Somebody fake is not. I mean, they're. It's just an illusion. They're not really talking to their parents at all.
Yeah, it's like, is everything okay with Wolfie? Wolfie's fine, honey.
Yeah, Wolfie's just fine.
Yeah. So this house is inhabited by staff, and the staff is Mrs. Griffin.
Yeah.
The guy who appears to Harvey Swick in the beginning of the story is called Rictus,
right?
Because he's got a big
Rictus
smile.
Has three siblings. There's Jive, Mar, and Karna.
Yeah. So Mar is the female.
Yeah, and Jive is kind of like the butler, I guess you would say. So Rictus is like the agent that goes out and gets kids. Jive is sort of like the butler that hangs around the house and takes care of things in the house.
Yeah.
Mar is, I don't know, Mar is some kind of a witch.
Mar appears if she's required.
Yeah, and then Karna is this flying demon thing with huge teeth that,
Karna mostly comes out at
security, I guess.
Yeah, Karna mostly comes out at night. Mostly.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then there's Mrs. Griffin. Mrs. Griffin is like the housekeeper. More like the cook, really. Mm-hmm. And she has 3 cats. She has Blue Cat, which is actually blue.
Yeah.
Clue Cat, whose tail is in the shape of a question mark.
And Stew Cat.
And Stew Cat. So yeah.
And over the course of the book, these horrible things keep happening to the cats.
Oh God, yes. The first horrible thing that happens to Harvey Swick after he arrives at the holiday house, which is awesome. Everything is awesome. It's like the Lego movie. Is that he sees poor Clue Cat. Mm-hmm. Clue Cat jumps up on the stove and he goes on and he sniffs at the boiling pot in the stove. And what happens is he flips it over and he gets burned, scalded, and falls to the ground and dies.
Yeah, so he caught on fire and he got scalded by hot soup or whatever it was.
Yeah. And it's terrible. It's like Clive Barker describes in detail how this cat is boiled, roasted, and thrown on the ground. And it's like, Clue Cat isn't gonna ask any questions anymore.
Yeah,
it's
and there was and Harvey wasn't really sure which killed him, if it was the fire or the scalding or the fall. And
he gets so upset about this, and the reaction of Mrs. Griffin that he cries. Yeah. And starts crying, like, oh my God, this terrible thing happened. And that's when Mrs. Griffin says something ominous. It's like, oh, I can't cry.
Yeah.
And I'll go like, So.
Yeah, and you see the cracks in the facade right away. But for people like Wendell, he's got this repeating through line of who cares. And Wendell is surprisingly apathetic to what happens to this cat.
Yeah, because I think that's the house taking over. It's
the spell of the house hits him really hard. Like he's when your mind is weak and you're really susceptible to the Jedi mind trick.
Yeah, these are not the droids you're looking for.
So,
that's true. He's pretty useless in this whole book.
He is,
Wendell.
Yeah, and you think he's going to be really helpful at the end, and he instantly. As soon as they get back, he just instantly becomes useless.
Yeah, zombie. Yeah. So, so we
were talking about the characters and the cats.
Yeah.
And there's a girl who's been living there even longer than Wendell, and her name is Lulu.
Mm-hmm.
And Wendell doesn't like Lulu. He stays away from her because he says she's crazy.
Oh, yeah, and by the way, just that part that you're coming to is when they say that Mrs. Griffin is the greatest cook in all of America land.
Oh, okay. Well,
so this takes place in America, I guess, but America land.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of a child's way of describing the U.S., I suppose.
I guess.
Well, and Clive was still living in England when he wrote this.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Because it wasn't until right before Lord of Illusions when he moved to the U.S. I think like right when he was he in the middle of? I forget.
Yeah, probably.
The Great and Secret Show is all about America, and that feels more American than The Thief of Always.
Yeah. This one, like I said, it feels very British, but it might have been because that's the way I first read it, because it's like Clive Barker was an English author, and he used like a lot of English vocabulary. Like
and I felt that way too. And when I read this line about she's the greatest cook in all of America land, that's the first time I noticed that. I'm like, whoa, wait, is this not in England?
I guess Clive was, going for a global book.
Yeah.
So, you're right. So Wendell falls under the spell really quickly, and the horrible thing happens to the cat.
Yeah.
But I really don't want to spoil this story too much, because it's such a nice book. I want people to experience it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what we could say is that obviously there's something more to the house. There's something more. You get a sense that Mrs. Griffin is a tragic figure.
Mm-hmm.
And there's whatever's happening to Lulu, that's sort of instrumental in Harvey discovering that there's something wrong with this place.
Yeah, and there's this beautiful description of the house on page 24 of my paperback that says, "The house was more wonderful inside than out. Even on the short journey to the kitchen, Harvey glimpsed enough to know that this was a place built for games, chases, and adventures. It was a maze in which no two doors were alike. It was a treasure house where some notorious pirate had hidden his blood-stained booty. It was a resting place for carpets flown by jinns and boxes sealed before the flood, where the eggs of beasts that the earth had lost were wrapped and waiting for the sun's heat to hatch them." It's like, oh my God, when I read this stuff, I was like, man, this is the most amazing prose that I've ever read in my life.
Oh, and there's the scene where Harvey is wishing for things, and I don't want, for different kinds of food. And he starts making up food, and I just love the language of it, and the poetry of the language, and the way it's all childlike and still really fun to read. Yeah. And there's a line, and it's on page 114 of the first edition, the hardcover. There was a lesson here, if he could only remember it. Evil, no matter how powerful it seemed, could be undone by its own appetite.
Oh man, I have that thing marked on my book.
And that line is so important, because that's a through line for every Clive Barker novel or story there is.
Mm-hmm.
You can pinpoint the moment, because people don't fight an evil thing until they defeat it, or they don't beat something to death or shoot it up until it dies.
Yeah.
Creatures in Clive Barker novels and stories that are bad usually undo themselves because they're overreaching in some way.
Yeah, because they can never win, because their nature is built to lose.
Yeah, they're so their own greed undoes them somehow.
Yeah, I have that one marked in my book as well. I was going to talk about that. Good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the inhabitants of the Hood House, or the Holiday House, are the cats, Rictus and his brother and sisters, Mrs. Griffin, and Wendell, Lulu, and Harvey. Those are the main characters of the book.
Yeah.
There are some very sinister secondary characters, which we'll get to, because in one of the days that Harvey is in the house, and every day he was in the house, a lot more time passed that he was not aware of.
Yeah.
So it's like in the daytime, it was like spring in the morning, then it became summer in the afternoon, then the evening turns into fall, and nighttime is winter. And every day he has one Halloween and one Christmas where he gets all his presents. So, I mean, for a kid, this would be like the amazing...
Yeah, so the morning is Christmas, and the night is Halloween, and the early, the morning before lunch is spring, and after lunch is summer.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And then nighttime is Halloween.
Yeah. So, and I think Clive really captures like what it's like to be a kid.
Yeah.
In one of the conversations that Harvey's having with in one of the conversations he's having with Wendell, he starts going on about Lulu. They go like, yeah, so what's the deal with Lulu? She's a little weird, and then Harvey says, she's probably going crazy. Her brain is turning to mush. And Wendell goes like, do you know about that stuff? And then he says, sure I do. My dad's a surgeon. And then he starts talking about these fake operations that he's seen his dad do, like skulls sawn open, legs sawn off, feet sewn on where hands used to be, and a man with a boil on his behind that grew into a talking head.
Yeah.
And that's just something a kid would come up with.
Yeah.
That's just, yeah.
Yeah.
That is something any kid would come up with.
Yeah.
But, so Wendell says, there's a lake, behind the house in the woods, there's a lake, and they got fish there. And it's like, oh, man, maybe we can go fish some, and Mrs. Griffin could cook them for us. And Mrs. Griffin goes like, what?
Yeah, she dropped her a cup of coffee or something and broke it on the floor.
Yeah, it's like she does almost a spit take and goes like, no, those fish aren't good. They're poisonous.
Yeah.
And they go like, huh, really? Yeah. Okay. So, and for a kid, again, this is like the perfect thing to say. Like, you shouldn't go there. They're poisonous. They're going to go there. They're going to poke their fingers at them.
Yeah.
And they're going to find out that there is a lake. There are these weird, googly-eyed fish in there. Mm-hmm. And it really makes Harvey feel pretty weird. And
yeah.
And at one point, he does see Lulu stand on the other side of the lake, gazing into the lake.
And Lulu's been sort of sleepwalking over to the lake, and there's a mystery there. Yeah,
there's a mystery, those fish and stuff. So one of the presents he gets in his first Christmas is this little ark, like this little Noah's Ark.
And it's a perfect reproduction of one that he lost that his father had made for him.
Exactly. He even says that when he unwraps the gift, he goes like, wait a minute. This isn't a copy of it. It's the real thing. Because he remembers his dad ran out of blue ink to paint the elephant's eyes. And so one elephant had blue eyes. The other elephant had green eyes. And he goes like, it's the same thing. And it's like the house knows what he dreams for, what he longs for, and it provides every single desire. But what the house takes from the kids is it takes away their life. It takes away their time.
Yeah.
And, it's the thief of always. It steals the time. So what happens is eventually they'll get tired of all this stuff. And one day, actually, it's one of the Halloween parties that Wendell does get to scare Harvey. Because he says, I'm going to be a hangman. I'm going to hang someone tonight. And then he goes out with Harvey, says, well, our Halloweens, we just go around the house. And he says, well, just go around the house. That doesn't sound like very fun. It's like, well, you'll see. And then they start going around the house, and it's like the house is huge. So, and there's all this stuff happening in the dark, and they hear these noises, and they see this huge creature jump out of the roof of the house and fly away. Mm-hmm. But it's flying really, it's almost scaling the air. So they get scared about that. And Harvey loses sight of Wendell, and he thinks he sees him on the treehouse. So he goes over to the treehouse, and all of a sudden he sees something swinging, and these fireworks come off. And he grabs onto something and pulls, and it turns out it's this mannequin of a hanged creature.
Yeah.
But in the dark, it almost looks real because Wendell used fried eggs for eyes, milk cream for the saliva in the mouth of a huge pumpkin. And he goes like, man, it looked like there was this horrible creature with a bloated head and, its tongue sticking out, and he was hanged. And eyes were bulging out. So it's all just the dark playing tricks on Harvey, and he gets really freaked out. Yeah. And he says, you know what? I'm going to get revenge on you.
Yeah.
So, and then there's the Christmas where he gets a Noah's Ark and stuff. But one night they're going to celebrate Halloween, and Jive, right?
Yeah.
Says, hey, you know what? You could be a much scarier creature, and you could get revenge on what Wendell did to you.
Yeah, and what ends up happening is kind of a turning point for Harvey, where he realizes that this place isn't as nice as everyone thought it was.
Right, because you can get scared and you can have a bad time at the holiday house.
Yeah, and people can get hurt or killed, and they almost encourage it.
Oh, and by the way, on the chapter called Seen and Unseen, when they're talking about a Halloween party, there was an illustration of masks on a wall.
Yeah.
And you can see a pinhead mask on the bottom left.
I remember that.
Yeah, you can see that right there. It's on page 52 of the paperback. So, that's really cool.
It's down in the lower left.
It's one of those little things that makes this part of the great expanded Clive Barker universe.
Yeah.
Maybe Mr. Hood is just another form of a Cenobite.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if one of the kids decided to dress himself up as Pinhead on a Halloween party?
Well, and actually, I mean, since we're talking about that, I mean, since
the box,
we're talking about things that connect. Mr. Hood has got an emptiness inside of him that will never be filled. He's kind of and it's kind of reminds me of Mamoulian and Nix. He wants to take people with him. He doesn't want people to see his darkness. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of I don't know. I mean, it sort of reminds me of those.
Yeah, in Clive Barker's mythology, all the monsters usually are just creatures who have a big void to fill, that have a huge appetite.
Yeah.
And like he said once, appetite marks the monster, such as celibacy the nun. It's, not for some nuns, but... But, you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So, and also at the end of this chapter here, the Seen and Unseen, there's a line that says, the light had almost gone, and even though Harvey was still enraged at Wendell and at himself for being such a sucker, he couldn't let it die away without making peace. "All right," he said, allowing himself a tiny smile. "There'll be other nights." "Always," said Wendell. The reply pleased him. "That's what this place is," he said as the light went out. "It's the house of always." So I think that's a nice name for the house. Also, I love the illustration with the Christmas tree and Chapter 7, A Present from the Past.
Yeah.
Did you see the one with the ornaments where it looks like the tree has a huge maw full of pointy teeth?
What's the name of that chapter? That's Chapter 7, you said?
Yeah, A Present from the Past. It's got the Christmas tree, and the Christmas tree has two huge ornament stars. And then there's these pointy ornaments that look like teeth. It's really fun.
Yeah, right. Yep, I'm looking at it now. Yeah,
that's really good.
Really cool.
Yeah. So one of the things that I thought was also really, really fun in this book is that even though Lulu is acting a little strange, she still goes on for a lot of the book. And at one point, Harvey is checking out her bedroom after she says that, I already got all the gifts that I wanted to in Halloween and Christmas that I spent at the holiday house. So she had a bedroom full of toys and full of this huge dollhouse where there's lizards inside the dollhouse. And there's a little illustration of those lizards in A Present from the Past in page 73 of the paperback. Mm-hmm. You see these lizards lounging around this ornate box?
Yeah.
It kind of looks like a puzzle box.
Oh. And that's...
In A Present from the Past.
What number is that? What chapter number?
Oh, it's Chapter 7. It's the same one.
Oh, okay.
So there's this illustration with the lizards where they're just lounging around a box. And Lulu had a bunch of boxes and boxes within boxes within boxes in her bedroom. Mm-hmm. So, it looks like a Hellraiser box to me.
Well, and that scene there, too, is kind of indicative of what the process is for grooming these kids, or for, it's like once they start to get bored or they start to run out of things that you can give them, then okay, now it's time to collect their souls. Or
it's like they turn into Innsmouth people.
Yeah, exactly.
They start getting bulgy eyes and they go live in the deep with the old ones. So, and then there's a chapter called Hungry Waters. Hungry Waters because when he gets the ark with the little creatures, he decides to go to the lake and throw the ark in the lake and, play with it. So what happens is that, these huge fish start showing up, and then he kind of sees Lulu. Or he thinks he sees something, and then he just gets closer to the lake and he falls in. And he topples over the ark. All the fish swim around Harvey, and there's a lot of foam and a lot of bubbles. And he kind of runs over to the lake's shore. And when he looks back, he goes "Oh man, the ark is all broken up. All the little lead figurines have fallen to the deep, and he lost it." So it's a bad day for him. But those little figurines are going to show up again later, and in a really cool way. And the first time that Harvey gets to meet Mar is during a Halloween party, right? Mm-hmm. When he wants to get revenge on what Wendell did to him.
So Jive brought Harvey up to the roof to meet Mar, and Mar reshapes his flesh, or reshapes him into a vampire at kind of Harvey's instruction.
Yeah, and it's really, really cool. There's also in this chapter a section which I think is amazing. This would look really cool in a movie, because ever since I've heard about the Oliver Parker live action movie project, I reread this book as if it was a movie. So I was like, wow, this would make a really cool scene. It's when they make magic. Wendell and Harvey climbed into the treehouse to discover that the branches around it were swarming with parrots and monkeys. Another day in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner, Mrs. Griffin called them through into the living room where the flames of the fire had taken on the shapes of dragons and heroes and were doing fiery battle in the grate.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost a montage, isn't it? Just reading it that way.
And in the heat of one lazy afternoon, Harvey was wakened from a doze by a chorus of shouts and found a troupe of mechanical acrobats performing clockwork-defying feats on the lawn. So, I mean, if you make a movie for the holiday house, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
These scenes are going to be amazing if they put them in.
Yeah. I hope it's 100% faithful.
Yeah, and that's also the first time that Jive appears. And Jive is like his name. He jive walks. He every single part of him is has a little tick, or he's dancing, or is jumping up and down the stairs in an elaborate dance thing. So it kind of reminds me of the guy that appears, the snake that appears to the Little Prince in the movie of the Little Prince.
Uh-huh.
The guy who dances like Michael Jackson. Have you ever seen the movie of?
No.
Okay, but you know what I'm talking about, right?
No.
Oh, that little book by Saint-Exupéry, The Little Prince, who lives in a little planet. And okay, well, it's a huge deal in Europe, that book.
Okay.
So there's a movie made out of it, and it's got this guy that has these moves that plays a snake that Michael Jackson's rumored to have imitated in the beginning of his career. Oh. So anyway, that's how I visualize Jive, dancing all the time with shiny shoes and tight pants and just, really jittery guy. So, yeah, and he says, hey, you want to have revenge on what Wendell did to you? I'm going to meet you. I'm going to introduce you to my sister Mar. And she starts asking him stuff like, hey, so what do you dream of being, And he talks about being a vampire, which is the same thing he dressed up in the first Halloween party, but he used a mask and a cape. And in this one, he actually is turned into a vampire. And one of the things I think it's sinister as well is that while Mar is changing him and with magic, she actually says, wow, you could be one of the great ones. You're natural for this. And, they're trying to convince him to stay that way forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's there's another red flag. Things are taking a turn to the dark side here. So, he's really turned into a vampire. He really can see in the dark. He has wings. He can fly.
And they
snarls.
Him off the roof to see if he can fly.
Yeah, well, and then it says, well, the wind wasn't there to beat him up. to bear him up.
Yeah.
So it says, he plummeted like a slate tossed from the gables, a cry of sheer terror escaping his throat. He saw Wendell turn, saw a look of mortal fear come onto his face, and then the wind came out of nowhere, cold and strong, and just as his legs brushed the bushes, he felt himself lifted and up toward the sky. So his wings kind of like, the wind kind of carries him, and he snarls at Wendell and goes like, "Oh no, don't kill me. I'm too fat and flabby. You don't want to kill me. You want to kill Harvey. He's really juicy." And and he doesn't know that it's Harvey because he's been transformed and he's got these bright red eyes and snarl. And he goes like, "Well, he really doesn't know it's me." And he's like, "Well, he's really scared." Yeah. So he goes like, "Huh." So and
the weird thing is here, Jive starts trying to talk him into killing Wendell.
That's the other part.
Does Wendell not see Jive?
I got the feeling that it's like Wendell is so scared, and Jive is like under a bush, going like, "Bite him, bite him,
maybe that's
taste his blood." And then he goes like, "Wait, no, I'm not gonna bite him." He's like, "Oh man, you're not gonna bite him?" And then Margot's like, "Oh, what a waste of magic, I thought you were gonna be one of the good ones, one of the great ones." Yeah,
they wanted him to murder Wendell.
Yeah, so huge red flag right there, Amber Alert.
Yeah, Amber Alert.
So, then there's Turnabout. Yeah. Which, it's like this whole book has a vampire kind of vampirical and kind of like idea going through it because all these guys are like, Mr. Hood's a vampire. He dresses like a vampire. And all of these guys are different vampires of something, if it's not desire or, whatever. So, there's at one point I thought if Jive and Mar could have been kids that had been transformed, they were one of the great ones. At this point I was like, I wonder if when I read this the first time, that's the mindset I got was, I wonder if these guys, these demons, are like kids who got transformed, like they were the bullies that came to Hood House.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
But then, according to the end of the story, I think they were created by Mr. Hood, so that theory doesn't hold. But at one point, I did think about that. If like he would turn into a vampire and then he would become one of them, I was like, could that be? So
So I think if we go too much further, we'll probably be giving away too much of the book. But
we can talk about abstract parts that we liked. Mm-hmm. So I like the fact that the demons live on the roof. They all live on the roof. Yeah. Jive, Rictus, Mar, Karna.
Yeah. And in a way, I think that it kind of feels like Jive and Rictus were sort of designed by Hood to interface with the kids, or to be like some twisted demon's idea of what a kid would like.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You're right.
This horrible-looking guy with this huge smile. It's like, the kids like smiles, right? Here you go.
Yeah, here you go, all these teeth. And then there's also a part
Jive
where
is like shaking and jittering and dancing all the time. It's like, that's horrifying, but it's kind of like a clown. Everybody thinks that kids like clowns, but most of them don't.
Oh yeah, and even in the drawings that he does of them, the first depiction is kind of like ambiguous, but then as the story goes on, they get really, really threatening and surly looking, with pointy teeth and like jagged brows and stuff. So I thought it was fun that he put the demons living on the roof and not on the basement. Yeah. It's like they're like the devil on the belfry or something like that. Yeah. So, and then Mrs. Griffin at one point says that, that's where the four of them live. Rictus, Mar, Karna, and Jive. And then Harvey says, "I've met them all, but Karna." And then Mrs. Griffin says, "Pray you never do."
Yeah. So Mrs. Griffin is really careful to watch what she says, but stuff, these little hints slip out now and then. And I think one really interesting thing about, I don't know if this is giving too much away, but the curse on Mrs. Griffin that I never realized before reading it this time was that she was a little girl and then she got turned into an old lady instantly.
Yeah, she says at one point that it took a few days. She doesn't really understand, but it took like a few days. It seemed like it was a few days until she grew old, and then it just stayed that way for years.
Yeah, so I mean, I'd always thought that she was a kid that grew old there in the holiday house.
Yeah.
But the reality was she grew old in a couple of days, and then she just stayed old for a really long time.
It can go either way. I mean, you can also, the way she says it, it says like it felt like it was only a few days, but maybe she was there for a long time.
That's true. Yeah, and
I don't know.
Time is really funny there.
Yeah, so like you said, time is really funny. But at one point, she also tells Harvey that Mr. Hood is dead.
Yeah.
And she's not lying. She's not lying, as we'll see further ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So then there's this awesome chapter, which for me is like when it gets to the right point of fantasy and darkness, which is what the flood gave up and what it took. Which is, by this time, both Wendell and him are starting to get a little bored. And Harvey is suspecting that something is not as it seems. Mm-hmm. And Lulu disappears in the meantime. And then she at one point appears in the dark, and she kind of like whispers and hisses a bit. And it's like Harvey can't see her, but she says, just close your eyes. I want to give you something because I'm going away. And he's like, oh, where are you going? And, he doesn't know, but at the same time, he kind of suspects. And then he closes his eyes, and she drops like 3 little hard things on his hand, and it's like 3 little lead figurines from the Ark that are still wet and dripping water. And he realizes that she has been to the bottom of the lake, so she's turning into a fish. And she leaves, and he goes after her, because he wants to take a look at her. And then he finally catches a glimpse of her, and she's like all glistening, and she's turning into a fish. Her face is like a fish, and she's got like a big fin going down her back, and her legs are almost fused together, and then she just jumps into the water and disappears.
Yeah.
And that's a really heartbreaking moment.
It is, yeah. And I forget because it was so long ago that I read this first story, but you kind of think, since I read this the first time, but you kind of at that point wonder, is this person past saving? Is Mrs. Griffin past saving, even Wendell?
Yeah, that's kind of like the life cycle of the kids in that house was they would have a lot of fun, then they would start getting their fill of all the toys and everything. They would start getting bored. As soon as they started getting bored, they start turning into a fish, and their destiny is to ultimately get drawn into the lake and just fall in there.
And being a fish, somehow their soul goes to Mr.
Hood. Yeah. So the fourth part of Darkness is the chapter about Karna, because she's the fourth of the Demon Brothers.
Right.
So this is the chapter when Wendell decides he wants to leave the house, and he goes over to the mist, the fog that surrounds the house, because at every time they're in the grounds of the holiday house, even when they climb the tallest tree, they look around. They can't see the city. They see a lot of sunshine, and they see the grounds of the holiday house. But as soon as it starts getting near the wall, there's a fog covering the rest, and they can't see the city. Mm. So it's like they're cut off from the rest of the city. And he says, I can't get home. I tried going through the fog. I just keep getting spat back into the house in the garden. So he's like, what? That's crazy. So they go there and they try to cross, and they get thrown back into, the holiday house. They get turned around in the mist. And, Wendell kind of freaks out a little bit. I think at one point they decide that, you know what? Let's just play along with this. Let's let the house think that we've given up leaving. And let's wait until everybody's asleep.
We'll
I'm sure
at midnight.
Even the house will sleep for sure. So they decide to do that. And the minute they reach the fog at night, they see the monster on the top of the house fly over to them, and it's Karna, and it's this horrible, horrible animal. It's got like dozens of tongues. It's got all these teeth. Also, some of them he took from Mar, because Karna took Mar's teeth.
Yeah.
Mar doesn't have any teeth, and he says, Karna took them from me. So, yeah, and this is the part where that line that you were talking about is used, the one where evil would undo itself with its own appetite.
Yeah.
Because Karna follows them, And they run and they run, and Mrs. Griffin comes out of the house, shouts at them and says, "Follow the blue cat." So she throws Blue Cat, and Blue Cat breaks the fog, and they follow him, and they come out of the other side. But so does Karna. And Karna can't stand being outside of the holiday house. She starts like shivering, and she starts getting old, and her stuff starts falling off.
In holes in her wings, and
yeah. She falls on the ground, breaks all her teeth, and bites off half her tongues and stuff. So she limps back into the fog and goes, and they're like, "Man, we made it. We're out of the house." And this is halfway through the book still, so it's not like an ending spoiler, but Harvey goes home. They say, "Man, let's go home. Let's pretend this never happened. We've only been here for a few days, so we'll go back to our parents and get back to our normal lives." They switch their addresses, and they go like, "Okay, here it is. Here you go. I go this way. You go that way." Harvey gets to his house, but he's having trouble. He's like, "You know what? This is weird. It doesn't look like the same way to go home. Some parts look older. Some parts look newer. There are different-looking cars in the streets." Mm-hmm. So he eventually finds his house, and he knocks on the door, and this old guy comes out and says, "Oh, what is it?" And it's like, "Oh, I must have gotten the wrong house." And then his mom appears in the back, like, "What is it, darling?" And he goes like, "Mom?" And then he realizes the man is his dad, and they're both super old. And he's like, "Oh, no." And then he realizes, my God, every year I spent in the holiday house, every day I spent there was like a year in real time. And, cue dramatic squirrel. It's like, chun, chun, chun. So that's the big turning point for the book. So you go like, oh, well, I thought this was going to be a happy ending. And then you see, oh, there's still half of the book to go. Okay. So he tells them what happened. They find it hard to believe. They don't know what to do. They try to find the Hood house. They can't find it. Finally, his parents say, you better go to the police. We'll tell them what happened. There's some kind of magic. We'll make them believe us. And it's like, well... And Wendell appears in front of his house one night. He goes like, "Hey," is like crying and is like, "Man, what's going on? My dad divorced my mom. My mom got super fat and she's old." And it's like, what happened? Where did the years go? And he says, "Well, yeah, I tried going back to the Wood house, but I couldn't find it." And he says, "Well, of course they couldn't find it. You were with your parents. The house doesn't want grown-ups. It wants kids." So they say, "Do you think we could find our way back to the house?" And he's like, "Yeah, man." So the house wants us. So they go, and practically their feet start moving on their own, and they find the way to the house like almost immediately. So they cross through the fog, and they find their way back to the house. But as soon as they get back to the house to confront, to know Mr. Hood, where is he? What did he do to us? Where are the years that he took from us? Mm-hmm. As soon as they get there, Wendell just goes like, "You know what? Who cares? Hey, we're back at the Hood house. Hey, you want to go to the tree house?" And he's like, "No, Wendell, we're here to confront Mr. Hood." Yeah. And he's like, "Who cares?" It's like, okay, well, you're useless.
Yeah.
So
and then Harvey says, "I'm going back to the house," and Wendell's like, "Oh yeah, that's where all the good food is. I'm coming with you."
Yeah. So I'm not going to spoil the ending, but yeah. So Mrs. Griffin is missing, and Rictus and Jive are like, "Hey, you're back. Oh, that's great. You're back here." Even though Rictus is a little less smiley than he used to be, and it's like, well, he pretends to be like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna get some food. Can I talk to Mr. Hood?" And it's like, "What do you want to talk to Mr. Hood for?" And he goes like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go over to my room," and he starts going over to the stairs, and Jive starts bringing him like pie and ice cream and stuff, and he goes like, "Hey, you want some pie? You want some ice cream?" He's like, "No, thank you. No, thank you." So he doesn't want anything. He knows that all of the stuff that he is given in the Hood house, it's all lies.
It's going to turn into dust, because that's what happened to his arc figures as soon as he left the mist and went into the real world.
Yeah, they just crumble into dust and mud. So he knows that none of it is real. And I really like the fact that at one point, Rictus gets really scary. Like, he knows that he's going upstairs to try to find Mr. Hood, and he says, "I could suck out the brains through your ears," he said, all the music gone from his voice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
where'd that come from? Like, it's like he's telling Harvey, "I know what you're doing. I'm on to you. You know, I know you want to destroy this, and I'm not going to let you." But, yeah, so Jive goes like, "You want some pie, want some ice cream?" He's like, "No, thank you, but here, you can have them." And he's like, "Oh, you don't want it?" And he just scoops that and puts it in his own mouth. And Rick just goes like, "No, don't do that." And Jive starts coughing up this smoke and this dust. And it's like, well, you know, now you've done it. You ate that thing, and it's reminding your body what it's made of. So it's dust, and you know. But I don't want to spoil it. I didn't go through the thing that he does to Mar because I don't want to spoil that part because it's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
I mean, he sort of confronts all of the different siblings, and
yeah, I like the way he confronts Karna when he goes up to Mr. Hood, because when he goes up to the attic, that's where he finds Mr. Hood, and there's also Karna there, and it's a very poetic thing the way he defeats Karna, because Karna hasn't really recovered from its wounds after it crossed the fog into the real world. So Karna is it's still a monster, but it's a very pathetic monster in that it's very wounded, and all it wants to do is die. And so he confronts Karna, and he defeats it just by simply, you know, offering it some comfort. Mr. Hood is actually, his face is seen on top of the attic. Like, his face is the ceiling of the attic, and it's really awesome. It reminds me of Hepexamendios, especially when he builds a body for himself at the end. It reminds me of Hepexamendios, this creature who is human in nature, but habitates a shape that is non-human. Mm-hmm. So so Tricks and Temptations is when Harvey tries to outsmart the Hood house. His tactic basically is going to be try to trick him into performing so many miracles that it's going to use up its magic. And there's one part here that I thought was hilarious. When Rictus is trying to convince Harvey to give in to the house, and he says, "Hey, it's the phone rings and it says it's the president. He wants to give you a medal." "No, he doesn't," says Harvey. Yeah. And then he says, "You're right. He wants to give you an oil field in Alaska." No, I got that wrong. He wants to give you Alaska."
Yeah, it's like, too cold. "Okay, I'll give you Florida." "Too hot."
So I thought of you in this part. I was like, oh man, Alaska, yeah. So and basically, Mr. Hood starts making all these temptations. Again, it's the Faustian tale, like in Hellraiser. He's like, "Well, I'll give you what you want if you choose to become my slave and learn how to be me. You know, like how to also feed on kids." And he goes like, "Well, you're going to have to make it worth my while." So he goes like, "Whatever you want." So there's all these things that he asks for. Like you said, he asks for a bunch of like different dishes and stuff. And some of the recipes he comes up with are really gross. Yeah. It's like crawfish cooked in cherry soda and horse steaks with jelly bean sauce and Boston cream cheese and pastrami soup. And it's like, whoa. Yeah. So he has all this. He asks for a field full of flowers, and no two could be alike. Yeah. And when Mr. Hood is doing this, you see like some window panes are coming off, some doors are cracking, like the paint is flaking off. So the house is taking its toll. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, he asks for a final wish, and the final wish is so hard to perform that Mr. Hood almost wears himself out, and he gets into the point where he can't stop what he's doing. He can't stop the disassociation of his body, that the house just crumbles away. So I'm not going to say what the wish was.
You've given a lot away already.
Yeah, that's true. It's more like, well, okay, I'm not going to say anymore. Okay. But I really love the way the book ends, because as you can imagine, there's a happy ending to this story. And all the kids... Oh, man, I can't say that, can I?
No.
I can't say that. It's just I got so used to talking about this book.
Yeah.
Talking about the things I love and the lines that I love about the book. I'll just say the last few lines here, okay? The last few lines of the story. Oh, by the way, my paperback has on the inside cover a commercial for Razorline, Marvel Comics.
Cool. Yeah, and we saw Thief of Always ads in the Razorline comics too.
Yeah. Well, the ending of this book is, and this is a huge spoiler, so if you were one of those people who doesn't want to know what the last sentence of a book is before you read it, stop listening now. And it's like time would be precious from now on. It would tick by, of course, as it always had, but Harvey was determined he wouldn't waste it with sighs and complaints. He'd fill every moment with the seasons he'd found in his heart, hopes like birds on a spring branch, happiness like a warm summer sun, magic like the rising mists of autumn, and best of all, love enough for 1,000 Christmases. So, yeah, man, this book is like magical to me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and that's kind of a really important lesson to not take life for granted.
Yeah, don't take life for granted.
And I kind of feel like Clive Barker feels that he needs to remind himself of that sometimes because he lives so much in his own imagination that he's not, maybe he feels that he's bored with the real world. Ooh,
that's very deep right there. I mean, we could start a whole episode just by segging into Chiliad after you said that.
Oh, yeah, right. Well, and the Hellbound Heart.
That too. And I think ultimately at the end, this story kind of, the message I took out of it was that be alert to the magic around you when you're bored. It's like the world is more wonderful than what you apprehend of it when you're bored. When you're bored, it's like you got blinders on. You're just looking at, oh, I'm bored. You're just sitting right there in that spot. You can't see beyond that mindset of being bored. Mm-hmm. But there's so much stuff you can do at any moment in your life if you just put your heart to it.
And you're responsible for your own happiness.
You're responsible for your own happiness. Yeah, you're responsible for your own perception of the world. You can choose. You have freedom, and even when it seems hopeless, even when it seems boring, nothing's going on. There's all sorts of things you can just do if you just be proactive. If you just take action instead of just sitting there waiting for the universe to impress you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, as far as feedback goes, we had you had asked the question on the Facebook page. This Thursday, the Clive Barker podcast will discuss a book that Clive Barker sold for $1 to get it published. Can you guess which one it is? And Tyler Harris guessed The Thief of Always.
Yeah, so, good one.
Yeah, first person that guessed it got it right.
Yeah, there's a few more things. Interesting thing is that Scholastic, the company that published Harry Potter's book in the United States, also published an edition of Clive Barker's The Thief of Always in the United States.
Really? What is the cover of that one?
The cover is this kid with like ginger hair, and he's in a living room, and
yes, I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like he's holding up a gift or something from the holiday house. So I think that's nice. I mean, I just thought it was a nice parallel thing with Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you know, but just an aside, the name of the first book is different in the UK and in the United States.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in the UK it's called The Philosopher's Stone, and in the United States it's called Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone.
Huh.
Don't ask me why. Yeah, but the names of the first books are different.
Wow. So I wonder why they would think that they'd have to stay away from alchemy references. I don't know.
I guess it's because what I read was that people thought that philosopher would put people off. They would think it was a philosophy book or something like that, having the Philosopher's Stone in the cover. So in the United States, they went for the sorcerer because it looks more fantasy-like.
It always makes me sad when people feel like they need to punch stuff up for the American audiences, or they're going to get bored or not buy something.
Yeah, or they have to dumb it down.
Yeah, that happens. It seems like that happens a lot.
Yeah. There's been a recent...
In England, they called them the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. In the comic, they called them the Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because ninja was not politically correct to use.
Yeah. So I suppose that's that goes around the world.
So we've mentioned this before, but there's also a recent audio version of The Thief of Always on Audible.com.
Yeah.
So the cover is one of the illustrations for the book, where you see Harvey Swig standing in front of the lake. And there's an article that I found, which is interesting, from Fearful Symmetry, which was an article published in the Allen Review. I think it was 2005. Mm-hmm. It says, Clive Barker says, I think I've always drawn little pictures beside it. And he means like his manuscripts. I handwrite. I don't have a typewriter. Often I've drawn little pictures of the way I think creatures or other elements of a story should look like, often just for consistency. If you're writing Weaveworld, an 800-page book, you want to be sure that you've got a really fixed, clear idea in the same way a piece of geography might be. So I will use a sketch for that purpose. In Aberrat, however, I reverse the system. I begin by painting the pictures. I painted 250 paintings before I show them to HarperCollins, and some of these are very large. So you know that firsthand. Mm-hmm. One of them is 27 feet long. I think he's referring to the beautiful moment here.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And then he says, because there had been some anxiety, and I think legitimate anxiety on Harper's part, that Clive Barker, the inventor of Hellraiser and Candyman, would easily turn his hand to children's fiction. The way that I actually dealt with that with Thief of Always was to give it to HarperCollins for $1 so that they didn't have any concerns about me being paid a massive amount up front. I said, I don't know if this is going to work any more than you do, but I really like to see this published. Let me give you this for a small amount of money. I think we have 1 million sold now here in the U.S. So this was in 2005. And then he says, everybody felt great about that. But then when I came back and said, okay, now I want to do a lot of books with lots of paintings, lots of color paintings, which is a big project. Yeah. So I guess in some way, Thief of Always became kind of a sounding of the waters for Clive Barker. Yeah. Ultimately opening the door to a book like Aberrat.
Right. Well, and Aberrat was only supposed to be 4 books, and they were called the Book of Hours at first.
Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, and now they've sort of morphed into 5 books, and I thought 4 books was kind of a neat idea because the clock is divided into 4 quarters, I guess, or.
Sure. Yeah, that would make sense.
But he couldn't get it fit. He couldn't fit it all into 4 books, so it became 5. And
well, they do have the 25th hour in Aberrat, so
that's true. Yeah, that's true.
There's another section of this essay where he goes on to say, I've been doing book signings over the last 6 or 7 years for The Thief of Always and the Aberrat books. We have J.K. Rowling to thank you in no small measure for this. And, this is kind of like coming full circle from me watching a Harry Potter marathon. Knowing that Clive Barker's mentioned so many times in interviews with Phil and Sarah that he likes the Harry Potter movies. So, and now there's this article that I found where he mentions, God bless her, she should be sainted. He says she made a whole generation obsess on something that they never obsessed on before. That made this generation word friendly again. And that's true because have you seen how big those J.K. Rowling final books are? Those are huge. They're like...
I know.
Magica huge.
Bigger each time. Kind of like what's happening with Aberrat too.
And then he says, the young people come to signings who knew everything about the books, often more than I do. And I think he's talking about Thief of Always now. Yeah. He says, they come and they have little contests with each other about how much information. Now, nobody has required them to do this. The book is not on anybody's syllabus. This is about them being engaged again with the word and the pictures again. And putting down the controller for the Super Mario Brothers, that's probably 10 years too old, but whatever the current thing is, Doom or whatever. That's like Clive... 2005, Doom was an old game.
Yeah, Doom was from the 90s.
And picking up a book and realizing that the book belongs to them in an intimate way, in a way that a game never will. Yeah. So that's awesome that he would see kids like saying, hey, do you know the names of the demons of the brothers of Karna and, Stuff like that. That's probably going to be heartwarming for Clive to see kids like recite all the names and stuff from the Thief of Always book.
Well, and it's true. It is pretty cool how kids got so obsessive over Harry Potter. I mean, now that's all done with, and I don't know what's taking its place. Maybe there isn't a book series that's doing that anymore.
Well, the last movie, The Deathly Hallows, when was that? That was like 2008? No.
Right, and the novels were done like maybe before that movies came out, so...
I really had good... I know we're going off topic, but I really had good... I had a really optimistic prospect for the Golden Compass.
Oh, yeah, right.
But then it's like, I know that Clive Barker really likes the Gold Compass books as well. He's recommended them on interviews and stuff. And I think the guy who wrote the Golden Compass also likes Clive Barker work a lot. But it's like the first movie apparently was a huge commercial failure, even though I like the movie.
Yeah.
So they decided... Yeah, they decided they weren't going to do any more. So it's like, oh, well, everybody missed out on that one.
Yeah. And Claire Higgins was in it.
Yeah. And, you had Daniel Craig. You had, like, at the time, Tom Cruise's ex-wife, Nicole Kidman.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like a huge talented cast, and you had bears with armor.
Talking polar bear, yeah.
So, yeah, well, the good thing is that, again, for those of you out there who might not be aware, almost a year ago, Clive Barker tweeted that The Thief of Always is being directed as a live-action feature by one of my oldest and most creative friends, Oliver Parker. More news to come as this project gets underway. And I think we can say this. I don't think we're going to be, like, spoiling anything for anybody, but from what I've heard, and I think you've heard it too, Oliver Parker already has a script finished for this, and they already did some kind of screen tests. So the production for this is moving.
Yeah. And for people because we've been hearing news about this movie forever, and there's been different versions of it and stuff. Okay, so this latest version is live action. It's not animated.
Right.
The animated version has gone away. That's gone into a shelf somewhere.
Was that like done by a Canadian company or something?
I think that's right.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's awesome to see Oliver Parker, one of the moving men from Hellraiser, Pelican from Nightbreed, and a talented award-winning director. I think he was Oscar nominated, right?
Maybe.
Or Oscar awarded.
Or maybe
by St. Trinians and
is that right?
movies like that, yeah. So... Well, he's definitely a good, competent director. So, looking forward to that.
I think he's more well-known for British movies, right?
Yeah, like St. Trinians and stuff like that.
Yeah. So this will be awesome. I think there's so much good stuff to come. And, in this year, 2014 has been a year of, of special editions of books that we've already had. But 2015 is we're going to start seeing new stuff again, which will be pretty cool.
Oh yeah. So that's it. I mean, I love this book. What else can I say? I love the cover. It's one of my all-time favorite covers.
And it's
I love the story.
Length of a novel for adapting into a movie.
Oh yeah, it's perfect. It even reads kind of like a movie. It's very descriptive. And, I could see this movie in my mind while I was reading it.
Oh,
and
yeah, definitely.
I love it. It's, he was...
And, Abarat, it's hard to imagine the art style or the way somebody's going to bring those crazy-looking painting characters to life. But The Thief of Always is not like that, right? I mean, you can clearly see in your mind how a movie would look.
Yes, I can clearly see how Brictus would be like. I can clearly see how Karna would be like.
Yeah.
And even like Mr. Hood. It's like I can see them as if they were, real sculptures and real special effects. I think that would work really well. It would be a very successful movie. It would be, maybe it would spawn sequels. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, the way the story ends doesn't really provide a sequel wiggle room. But
if a movie's popular enough nowadays, it's like they just don't
as long as
they'll do it. Yeah.
As long as they don't do like Harvey Swick and the Poseidon Trident or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like some other thing that doesn't have anything to do. It's like someone's project that has been rewritten to include Harvey Swick into it. Then
or like Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters.
Yeah, something like that. Like
Harvey Swick is a vampire.
Harvey Swick, Vampire Hunter. Yeah.
And his sidekick Wendell, who's like an old guy.
Oh, dude, with a walker made of silver that shoots like stakes from the bottom or something like.
And he'd have the catchphrase, "Who cares?" Yeah,
it's like he would like say that before he kills a vampire. He'd be like, "No, don't kill me. I only drink animal blood. Who cares?" Yeah, Hugh Jackman plays Mr. Hood or something like that. Anyway, beautiful book. Love it. Recommended. Back when Clive Barker was still, pitch perfect. It's like he didn't go on and say, well, he didn't start writing this book and go like, well, wait a minute, maybe I can make this an 800-page book.
Well,
he wrote a short book, a lot of economy in space, but not economy in style. It's just very, very stylistically beautiful.
Yeah, but at the same time, the fans, I think at the time were like, okay, where's Cabal 2? Where's the second book of the art? And and then Thief of Always came out, and it's like, okay, that's not either one of those things. And then Imagica came out. It's like, okay, this is a giant book. You're not even trying to make the second book of the art or the sequel to Cabal.
Yeah, and you remember back when he started talking about, I'm going to make a huge encompassing book that's going to be called The Everything.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh boy.
Yeah, right. And it's like, so that all, I think that kind of all started in the 90s. It's like he has these big plans for these books, but then, he gets other ideas, and it's like, well, now this is kind of what I want to do. And it's amazing to me that Abarat is the one that he's decided to stick it out and finish the whole series with really, really limited interruptions, right? I mean, you had a short mini novel in
Mr. Begone.
Mr. Begone,
which is kind of a demonic counterpart of The Thief of Always in some ways.
And then I guess he spent off hours working on the Scarlet Gospel.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And then he gave it over to Mark Miller.
Yeah.
So,
Scarlet Gospels, I guess you could argue, started before Abarat, probably.
This book is very polished, very stylistically perfect, beautiful prose.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know.
And I think that I don't know. I mean, I think that the publishers should have given it. I mean, they did give it a chance, but he shouldn't have had to say, "I'll give this to you for $1." I mean, once they've read the book, they should know. Yeah,
like I just got the RoboCop guy. I'd buy that for $1.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a gamble, and it worked, and it opened the door for Abarat.
And this would be his second attempt, right, to make a children's book, because Weaveworld was the first edition of the first version of Weaveworld was a children's book that got turned down.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't know that. That's wonderful.
So that's probably why he didn't have a lot of confidence in getting The Thief of Always published.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I mean, I'm still holding out for Clive one day tweeting something like, I'm doing part 2 of Mr. Maximilian Bacchus's Traveling Circus.
That would be cool.
And I'm going to do a third part.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and he said that, okay, after the Abarat books, and then he's going to do the third book of the art next.
Mm-hmm. And then Cabal 2 and 3.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that's ever going to happen.
I forgot to add to the news, I guess I just might as well say it here, that Clive Barker did issue kind of an unofficial statement on H.R. Giger's passing. He signed a book during the Meltdown Comics autograph session where he said, and let me get that exact quote for you. Or is that... There it is. In memory of one of the greatest monster makers of all time, H.R. Giger, with love from Clive Barker. And then he says, May 13th, 2014. And it says, H.R., you have a place in Midian. So it's like Nightbreed is very, very present in Clive Barker's mind right now with all this Occupy Midian and Nightbreed, director's cut being worked on and everything. It's nice to see Clive is still writing this Nightbreed vibe thing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and he had talked about doing a new book kind of like the Nightbreed Chronicles.
Oh, yeah.
Which would be cool. I mean,
I would love that.
Yeah, that was maybe a year ago. I remember him mentioning that, and I hope that still comes to pass. I hope someday he does write a sequel to Cabal. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
And maybe if the director's cut of Nightbreed is a big success, which I really think it will be, but maybe someday they'll consider a sequel.
Yeah, but you know what? I'll be fine if there is no sequel to Cabal, because honestly, it's like a Messiah story. So at the end of the story, it's like it just goes on. It's like he'll be back in the next wind, and it's like for me, I think that's a good ending. I would love to see adventures, but it would just be like reading about. He at one point said that he thought about a future for the story where they would be like X-Men, like the Nightbreed would be like X-Men. I don't think I would like that personally. But, depends on how we would make it.
Yeah, because, I mean, when Clive Barker says that doesn't mean that it's going to be very similar.
Sure.
He doesn't really copy things that much.
Yeah. So, Thief of Always. I'm gonna probably post a pic of my work copy for this with all the annotations.
Cool, yeah. It'd be cool to see a picture of that. I'll put up a picture of my line ticket.
Okay. Well, be sure to check out the show notes, and thanks for listening. Hope we didn't bore you too much.
Yeah, we rambled a little bit, but that's what we do.
We'll let you know what the next episode is going to be on the Facebook page and on the WordPress blog, so be sure to check it out.
Yep, we've got a pretty good idea, but we need to get it finalized.
All right.
Okay. All right, well, thanks.
Thanks for listening. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bandwidth for this episode was provided by Ryan Danhauser, at Remax Associates of Fairbanks. If you know anyone looking to buy a house or sell a house in the Fairbanks, Alaska area, or you're just curious about Fairbanks, Alaska real estate, go to www.ryandanhauser.com.
You can reach us on the web at www.clivebarkercast.com. Leave us a review on iTunes. We're on Podomatic, Xbox Music Store, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, Doubletwist, Blackberry, and Pocketcast. Like our page on Facebook and join the Occupy Midian group. On Twitter, we're at BarkerCast and at Occupy Midian. The forum is www.clivebarkerfans.com/forum. Opening theme by Colin Lacativa.